2023 meeting of the Local Planning Agency of the City of Dunedin will now come to order. The Local Planning Agency is an advisory board of citizens appointed by the City Commission. This board is comprised of volunteers who represent the thoughts and concerns of the community. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to make recommendations to the City Commission regarding each item on the agenda. Tonight, we will be conducting public hearings. Therefore, this meeting is open to the public. Anyone in the audience who wishes to give testimony to any of the items on the agenda will need to be sworn in by the Deputy City Clerk. Get it right? Okay. The swearing-in process will occur after tonight's first agenda item, which will be the approval of the minutes from the last LPA meeting. Please be aware that this local planning agency is not a quasi-judicial board and therefore has no final decision-making power. Our procedures, however, are structured in a quasi-judicial manner for the benefit of those who come before it. Tonight's format will be as follows. I will introduce each item on the agenda, after which the city representative will present information about it. Thereafter, the members of the local planning agency will respond to the city representative. Finally, anyone from the public may come forward. Those from the public wishing to give testimony will need to approach the dais, identify themselves, and then utilize the speaker's lectern in order for their comments to be recorded. Upon the conclusion of the public hearing, the local agency will consider the evidence before it and will vote on the agenda item. This voice vote is the rendition of the order of the board, and there will be no written decision issued by the board. The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes from the June 14th, 2023 LPA meeting. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes?
No. I'll make a motion to approve as read.
I'll second.
Second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes. The city clerk will now swear in all persons wishing to speak or give testimony to any of tonight's agenda items.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you are about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
The second item on tonight's agenda is application AN-LUP ZO 23-02, voluntary annexation, land use plan amendment, and zoning district designation of 2010 Greenbrier Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida, 33763. Ordinance 2309, or 2309, voluntary annexation into the City of Dunedin. Ordinance 2310, land use plan amendments to public/semi-public, P/SB, residential low, RL, and preservation, P. Ordinance 23-11, zoning district designation to neighborhood business, NB, single-family residential, R90, and conservation, C. At this time, and I probably should have asked this earlier, well, this is the right time. Is there anyone on the board that has any ex parte communication regarding this item on the agenda that's come before us?
No.
Okay. We can move forward. Joey, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Joseph DePasqua on behalf of Community Development. And so this evening with this application, I'd like to walk you through a brief presentation, go over the points that we're going to be discussing tonight, which is the three ordinances and what each one of them do for us this evening for your consideration. Again, application AN-LUP ZO 2302. and the 3 ordinances. So a little application information. The property owner is BSH Preserve LLC. They are also the applicant. They are being represented by Matthew Poling with Trenum Law. Mr. Poling is in the building this evening, and I'm sure will be presenting any evidence in case on behalf of his client. And essentially, the petition you're considering this evening, of course, is the voluntary annexation of the subject property from unincorporated Pinellas County into the city of Dunedin, and then we're going to be recommending placing appropriate land use, plan, and zoning district designations on the property. Again, the address of the property is 2010 Greenbrier Boulevard in Clearwater, Florida. The property size is just over 11.5 acres, more or less. Moving to some background and an aerial map of the property. As you can see, the property is located at the northwest corner of Virginia Avenue and Greenbrier Boulevard. Again, about 11.5 acres in area. There are currently 2 uses on the property: an assisted living facility known as the Preserve at Clearwater, and an office building that is used as a private school. A large portion of the property, as you can see, and I've identified on the map where the assisted living facility is, and then the approximate location of the office building. And you'll see to the north and to the east is by and large wooded. That's the preservation and sort of conservation area on the property, a very large portion of the property. Some of the background really has to do with this property many years ago, back in 1985, needing sanitary sewer service from the city when it was, of course, not in the city. And in exchange for that sewer service, there was a declaration of covenants and restriction that was recorded that says, at such time when the property becomes contiguous, that it should be annexed. Of course, as you know, you've seen 3 applications in the neighboring area: the Gladys Douglas property, the Jerry Lake property, and then the city-owned wastewater property, all of which are contiguous to this property. It's also within our Dunedin planning area. You've heard that term before. We have an area that is contemplated, so it's contiguous, it's in our planning area, and frankly, since 1985, at some point it was anticipated that it would be annexed. These are just a couple Google Street views I wanted to share so you have an idea of what the building looks like. So this is a street view from Greenbrier of the 2010 Greenbrier Boulevard property. It's the assisted living facility. It's 93 beds. It's a 3-story structure, a little more than 93,000 square feet in area. Here's also a Google Street view of the Service Learning Micro School, which has a Virginia Avenue address. Again, it's a micro school, grades K through 12. It's a 1-story building, about 4,600 square feet in area. Moving to the land use. So as you can see, this property does have multiple land uses on it, so I'd like to kind of walk you through how it sits today in Pinellas County's land use plan, and then how we're proposing to put it in our future when it's annexed into the city. So as you can see, the smaller map to the left is the Pinellas County future land use map. So this is how it sits today. The green area is, of course, preservation. That's what the P stands for. You see there's a very large portion of it that currently sits in preservation. There's a small area in the yellow there that is residential low land use. And then the blue area is institutional. So that's how it's in Pinellas County today. And you can see there's the configurations of those different colors are pretty unique, but they follow the pattern of the site. Moving to the map on your right, this is what the city is proposing to happen after annexation. Of course, the preservation becomes the city's version of preservation, so that's pretty straightforward. The institutional, or the blue, that area where the 2 buildings sit, that land use no longer exists in our comp plan, nor does it exist at the countywide level. It's been replaced with public, semi-public. So we're recommending that land use be placed on it. I will tell you there's almost a mirror image of the 2. The PSP as a land use carries the same densities, the same intensities, and all of the same uses. It's simply a different nomenclature for it. And then the RL, the county's RL will be replaced with RRL, meaning residential low. And this will all happen, we're recommending, in the same configuration as it sits today in Pinellas County. So we're looking at really the only difference is we're going to be going to the PSP, which is the replacement for the I institutional.
Can I ask you a question while you're at it?
Sure.
Why is that little postage stamp of RL? Why wouldn't that become P? Preservation?
Probably because of the configuration of the land. I honestly don't know. You're talking about the little island along Virginia Avenue there, but that's
No.
kind of cut off?
The
In the
residential.
That RL, that would be.
Oh, the RL.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how the land use was originally set. It may have been based upon something that happened on the site many years ago. But for the purpose of staying consistent, we just felt it would be good to just continue that forward.
Okay.
So now we'll talk a little bit about the proposed zoning for the site. So the area that, of the property that is going to be public, semi-public, that blue area you saw on the previous map, we're recommending the neighborhood business, or NB, zoning be placed on that portion of the property, again, in the same configuration as the underlying PSP land use. Then the next portion is that RL, the residential low. For consistency reason, we're putting R90 as a zoning over it because that is the compatible zoning to go over RL. Neighborhood business is not, as you would imagine. Neighborhood business typically would not be a zoning over top of a residential land use. And then the third piece is to take the area that is preservation land use and place the conservation zoning on it, which is consistent. Obviously, you're preserving and conserving. And so we're anticipating doing that basically in the same exact configuration you saw the land use. So there'll be really no change to, I'll call it the shape of the land use and the zoning on the property. So after this evening, if you're wondering what our next actions are, you're used to this process. This is the first step. The next step would be first readings of all three ordinances, and we would bring your recommendation this evening forward to our city commission. And then if the city commission does pass all three ordinances on first reading, then of course we transfer this as a Tier 1 amendment to our countywide plan map to Forward Pinellas. That is a relatively abbreviated process. It doesn't take as long as a longer Tier 2 amendment because we are taking really like for like here. And that, once we get that approval from Forward Pinellas, then we would bring it back to the City Commission for second and final readings of all three ordinances. We expect that process after first reading to take about 2 months to happen, but we don't anticipate any issues. We did have a pre-application with Forward Pinellas staff, and we've indicated what we were recommending here, both to them and to you and to the City Commission, and they were in concurrence. And so that being said, the staff recommendation is to approve the application and the following ordinances. The ordinance 2309, which is the voluntary annexation of the subject property into the city of Dunedin. After that annexation, we're recommending under ordinance 2310 to designate the property as public, semi-public, residential low, and preservation on the city's future land use map, and that in the same configuration I've just discussed. And then lastly, ordinance 2311 to designate the property as neighborhood business, single-family residential, R90, and conservation C zoning district following annexation, again in the same configuration as I showed you previously. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the application or the ordinances.
Anybody?
I just have one question on that R90 section again, that small little piece.
Yes, sir.
Is it even accessible to ever be developed? It looks like the only way you'd access it would be through the parking lot of the assisted living facility. Am I looking at that properly?
Yeah, it's probably a question for the applicant. I don't believe they have any intention of developing back
Okay.
that far, but they certainly, I'm sure Mr. Poling could answer those questions for you.
But is it safe to presume that by keeping it consistent, it should make that Tier 1 review easier? for the
Yes,
county?
yes.
Okay.
So I thought that was a really good question, and I had the same question. And you can access it by the parking lot. So I guess were there plans, and I'm sure that's the applicant, if it's a 93-bed, to add to that capability of beds space.
So I'll leave the specifics
Yeah.
up to
No,
the
no,
applicant.
no, I got
However,
it.
what I will tell you is that the land use and the zoning we're recommending leaves everything on the site conforming. So they would be able to, whether they can develop on that small piece or not, there's development rights on that property that can be blended across the site. So it is possible that they could do additional development on the site within the land use and zoning. They could do that today in the county. There's no difference.
But
We're not, anything we're recommending doesn't change density or intensity.
It would change with the certificate of need.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I did my drive around, and that school, has that always been a school?
I don't believe it's, a little bit of research I was able to do, it looks like it's been in operation for less than about 10 years there. Certainly the applicant may be able to give you more detail than
And
that.
then I sort of would, because I drive that way a lot, and I would ask, I was just curious how many attend, if there's any traffic. That road goes to 40 miles an hour, goes very high. I'm just curious.
There, according to their website, when I was preparing the staffing, it was less than 50 students.
It does not tell how many students.
Less than 50,
Oh, less than 50, okay, thank you.
yes.
Besides do they have any other City of Dunedin utilities out there? They have city sewer, I understand, is that what I'm?
Yeah, the original reason for the covenant I discussed was to receive sanitary sewer from the city. The other utilities, I'm not aware of if they're on county or city water or not.
I'm kind of curious, I know we had this annexation all prearranged. Did the owner come to us saying, hey, now we're close enough to do the annexation, or did the city go to the owner? I'm just curious.
The city actually initiated discussions. Our former Public Works Director was aware of the agreement, and he initiated discussions with the property owner and with us as far as our, we're the conduit to bring this to you. So it
And
was a city-initiated request, yes.
property owner, BSH Preserve LLC, they own all of the parcels, correct?
Yes.
Even the residential one that we all seem to be a little concerned about.
It's a single parcel. It's a single parcel.
Single
It just
parcel.
happens to have multiple land use and zoning on it, but it is a single parcel.
Does anyone else have a question? Our attorney, may I ask you a question, please? So we're going to do, when we do our voting, when we get there, we're going to do three, one on each of the ordinances. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, shall we hear from the applicant?
Good evening, Matt Poling, represent the applicant.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your first.
Matt Poling, 200 Central Avenue, St. Pete. So I guess let me go through some of the questions you had. On the residential low piece, my guess is that that's just some relic from 30 years ago on the county's plan. If you look at the city's utility station to the east, it also has a residential low classification, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's my guess. And then if you actually compare that to an aerial, that's right now a pond. It's a retention pond. So, I'm sure. So practically, I mean, nothing's going to get built on a retention pond. But the current institutional, which is changing over to the public, semi-public, allows for 12.5 units per acre. That's residential units. And for assisted living and nursing homes, there's a multiplier of 3 beds per unit. So it's regulated by number of beds. So there's actually quite a bit of capacity on the property potentially to add some more beds. The owner has been toying with that, but there's some site constraints. The wetlands, obviously, there's some floodplain. The height, the max height in this zoning district is 35 feet. So it's not like they're going to put, a tall building out there. But as Joseph said, this is it's a voluntary annexation, but the city initiated it due to this declaration from the 1980s which requires the owner to annex in. And this owner is probably 6 owners after that owner back from the 80s. So they just recently bought the property. They knew of the declaration, and then the city reached out and said, hey, you're adjacent to the city, it's time to annex. So we're here.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Are you saying that the RLCI, that's where the retention is? Not
Yeah,
on the
I was
RL.
just, I don't know if we have an aerial that has it overlaid. If you could put the aerial, well, it's hard to see, but
Yeah, it's sort of behind it, but
yeah, it's kind of to the northwest of the building up there. Oh, well, yeah. Do you have an overhead? Okay, well. Yeah, no, it is mostly, if you overlaid the land use with the aerial, it's mostly a retention pond, that RL area.
that RL.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have any plans on putting a house there.
What I could add, if you have your staffing available to you there, you do have a copy of the survey in the application, which I believe is Exhibit B, I
Yes.
believe. And there is a
Surveys-
survey, and you'll see the pond is
Yes,
identified.
surveys are for engineers.
Yeah. Well, it does identify the stormwater management system on the site on the survey. So if that helps.
I have a question, Joe or Matt, whatever works best for you, but the 2 public, semi-public zones are connected by that little blue strip that bifurcates the conservation zone? What is that? Is there like a roadway or a pathway between
Yeah,
those
I
2?
believe so. What this is supposed to follow is the wetland line. That's why it's kind of all jagged. It doesn't exactly, but it generally does. So that's why you've got these kind of strange pockets of public, semi-public, and then the residential low. It doesn't always line up exactly, but that's why it looks that way.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, I'll open up this agenda item to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come forward and speak on this agenda item? Hearing nobody asking to or seeing no one coming, I'll close this portion of the public hearing. Members of the board? Steve?
Has there been any adding up the total taxable generation to the city, what this will generate in property taxes to the city?
We have not, no. What I can tell you is this application, like any other application, does get reviewed internally by our economic development department, but I don't think they. Yeah, certainly there's a significant value to the land and the buildings if you look up the value on the property appraisers and whatnot. It's a very significant
That
cost.
property in that building, yeah?
Yes.
Anything else? Anybody have any conversation here? Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for acceptance of ordinance 23-09, the annexation part.
We have a motion for acceptance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Ordinance 2310, land use plan amendments to public, semi-public, P/SP, residential low, RL, and preservation P. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
you.
ordinance 2310 as stated.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously. Ordinance 2311, zoning district designation to neighborhood business, NB, single-family residential R90, and conservation C. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. All right. We have, at this time in our meeting, an opportunity, open forum, for the board to discuss anything that they wish to hit on our city staff on. Is there anybody that would like to ask them a question?
I read a recent article, and maybe you could update us on the Dunedin Gateway.
Yeah, unfortunately, that project is not moving forward as it was originally contemplated. I think the developer has indicated that he's going to try to reimagine the site. And so I would expect that at some point in the future, you would see a new iteration for that site.
Sorry to hear that. We wanted to move in there. No, I didn't. It was a very nice project.
There is correct me if I'm wrong, there's a for sale sign, correct?
I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, I have not. It's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Any,
Even I can't dream stuff up like that.
Yeah, I understand. I haven't personally seen it.
have we received any proposals on the Ocean Optics property from that landowner?
No, we have not.
Not yet.
Remember, right before COVID, that was in motion. Is it the same owner that had it? Remember prior to COVID, the presentations that we had? Has there been any movement since then?
I think the presentations, or at least some of the preliminary stuff you saw, was a previous potential development. It's been since purchased. The gentleman that, since then it was purchased, and that person has owned it for a few years now, maybe 2 to 3 years, unfortunately, since probably right about the beginning of COVID, or the middle of it, so to speak.
I did read in our email from Joan about the success of our staff, new member, whatever we call them, the studies, the
Orientations.
Orientations.
Yes.
I'm understanding they're either complete or they've done well, and sounded like another one of our city boards was going to try and do the same thing. They thought that was a good idea,
Yes.
and I still do.
Yes.
I think our attorney here wasn't too pleased with what I tried to do the last meeting with bringing on a couple subjects for conversation. I don't know that we still can do that or we can't do that, but maybe staff can make a suggestion as to whether or not we want to continue with that. I'm just kind of curious, since I did not attend any of those meetings. Did we cover things as simple as compatibility?
Yes, so the orientation, I think everybody up here who is except for I would say our veteran members have been through the orientation, with the exception, I think we had one cancellation that we need to do a makeup on. And then certainly you two gentlemen would be more than happy to offer that as well. But it covers I'd say it covers comprehensively the entire gamut of responsibility. And there is an emphasis about sort of very at the beginning about compatibility and how important that is, and the nexus between our land development code and our comp plan, Objective 2.9 that everybody's heard used to be Objective O. Yeah, it's discussed. Yes, sir.
But y'all have done a great thing with that by making it in your staff report
Yes.
a major topic, and you address it, okay? And as long as you keep doing that, I think that's a great process. It's a lot easier for us when we're understanding what we can either object to or we can't object to as far as compatibility is concerned. So your staff help there works well.
I want to thank the staff for an excellent orientation. I appreciated it very much.
welcome.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it too.
So if staff, city attorney, would like us not to do any of these further things in our board meetings, I'm okay with it. I think we've got some very good board members that hopefully are now all tuned into what we're all about. So if there is no need for that, I won't make an issue anymore. Okay?
Certainly, the board may do as it pleases.
I'm sorry?
Board may do as it pleases, whether that's in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else have anything for staff? Okay, our next meeting is September 13th.
Chair, would you like to ask for citizen input?
Oh, I forgot about that one. Okay, so because we have this open forum, we do have to ask for citizen input, and I have to open this to the public again. Okay, it is open to the public again. Any comments on our forum that we just had with staff? Hearing none or seeing no one coming to the podium? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Next meeting, September 13th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.